Before we begin this night prayer, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video. I'm here again, in the middle of this stillness that doesn't feel soft tonight. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a wide open room I don't know how to fill. Sometimes it echoes back everything I've tried to quiet. And sometimes it feels like standing at the edge of something I can't name. Too hollow to understand, too invisible to fight. So I come to you without a song, without a defense, without much left to hold up. Just me and this silence. And I don't know if I'm asking you to break it or bless it. I just need you to be somewhere inside it. Because if you're not here, I'm not sure what's left to hold on to. I've sat in enough quiet nights to know the difference between stillness and absence. And still, there are nights like this when my thoughts grow too loud for sleep, and every corner of the room feels like it's missing something essential. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's clarity. Maybe it's just the sense that I'm safe. I don't know anymore. I just know I'm tired. And I don't mean physically. I mean tired, in the way that silence shows you everything you didn't want to deal with. And suddenly, your soul feels like it's standing outside in the cold with no one opening the door. That's the kind of tired I'm in. So I whisper this prayer not as someone trying to say the right thing, but as someone sitting cross-legged on the floor of the soul, asking you to sit down beside me. I don't need rescue tonight. I need refuge. I don't need a breakthrough. I need a shelter, not something that fixes the silence, but something that makes it bearable, something holy, that tells me I'm not abandoned in the space where sound has stopped and the world feels far away. I need you to be the roof over this ache, the breath that doesn't need to speak, the hand that doesn't leave. Maybe I've been afraid of this silence because it mirrors too much. It reflects the questions I haven't answered, the places I haven't healed, the fears I haven't even dared to name. In the noise of the day, I can avoid them, but at night, when the distractions go quiet and the lights dim, I'm left with just me. And maybe that's why I'm asking you to be my shelter, because I'm not sure I can be that for myself. I've tried to talk myself into calm, tried to logic my way into peace, tried to rearrange my thoughts like furniture to make the space inside feel more livable. But nothing works when the silence is this thick. Nothing comforts when the echo of what if it never gets better's the loudest thing in the room. I need you to be bigger than this echo. Not in the way that drowns it out, but in the way that surrounds it. I need you to be the presence that wraps around the ache and tells it it's not alone. I need you to be the invisible arms around my invisible wounds. I need you to make this emptiness less threatening, to make the silence sacred, not scary. To remind me that even if I feel like I'm in a void, I am still in the center of your gaze. That even when I can't feel the warmth, I haven't been abandoned to the cold. Maybe you've always lived in the silence. Maybe I've just been too afraid of it to recognize you there. Maybe all this time, you've been waiting for me to stop filling the space with words and plans and anxieties, so you could meet me in the untouched stillness beneath it all. And maybe tonight is the night I stop resisting it. Maybe tonight is when I stop trying to escape the quiet and begin to rest inside it, because you are in it with me. I don't know how to rest here yet. I don't know how to surrender to silence without feeling like I'm losing something, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to let you teach me how to breathe in the quiet, how to see the beauty in a space that isn't filled, how to sit with the unanswered and still be held, because you've never asked me to solve the silence, only to trust that you're near. So here I am, not demanding light, not begging for noise, just whispering your name like a candle in a vast, dark room, hoping you'll light the inside of it, not with volume, not with answers, but with nearness, with presence, with the kind of shelter that doesn't erase the night, but holds me gently through it. You've been that before. I know you have. I remember other nights when I thought I wouldn't make it, And somehow I did. Not because everything changed, but because you stayed. And I want to believe you're still that kind of God. The kind that sits in the unspoken places. The kind that doesn't flinch at my silence. The kind that hears the heart when the mouth forgets how to pray. The kind that shelters the soul when the spirit feels thin. If I'm honest, I don't want to run from this anymore. I don't want to chase noise just to avoid discomfort. I want to learn how to live even here, even in the empty spaces, even in the lonely hours, even when no one else is watching. I want to learn that your presence doesn't depend on my performance, that you're not more near when I'm strong and not less near when I'm fragile, that the quiet isn't proof of distance, but sometimes the sound of you drawing closer. God, be my shelter in this silence. Be the roof over the questions I can't answer. Be the warmth in the places I don't show. Be the light that doesn't blind me, but makes me brave enough to stay. Be the softness where I've been hard on myself. Be the home I return to when everything inside me wants to flee. Because I know you don't flinch at silence. You don't fear the stillness. You created the rhythm of night and rest. You spoke the world into being. And then you rested, not because you were weary, but because rest was holy. Help me remember that this silence isn't punishment. It isn't proof of failure. It isn't a mistake. It's a space where I can finally be fully human, not performing, not pretending, just being. And being with you is enough. If you never say a word tonight, I still want to believe you're here. If no sign comes, if no answer appears, I still want to be held by the possibility of your nearness. Because sometimes, just believing you are near is enough to shift the weight inside. Sometimes, just choosing to believe you see me, even when I don't see much else, is the first step back to peace. So I'll stay here. I won't fill the silence with false things. I won't try to rush what needs to be still. I'll let the night be what it is, not something to survive, but something to shelter in. If you're here, then this isn't an empty place. If you're here, then the silence is already full of mercy. I just haven't yet felt. If you're here, then I'm not abandoned. I'm hidden, covered, kept. There's a kind of heaviness that comes not from grief or fear, but from the in-between. Not from the wound itself, but from the waiting. And this silence tonight, it feels like that kind of space. A waiting room with no clock, no names being called, just the slow passing of minutes I can't measure. I keep listening for you, hoping I've just missed the whisper, thinking maybe if I hold my breath long enough, you'll speak into this ache. But what if you already are? What if this silence is not the absence of your voice, but the form it's taking tonight? Maybe you're not giving me answers because you're giving me yourself. Maybe you're teaching me to hear in a new way, not with my ears, but with something deeper. Maybe presence can be quiet and still be real. And maybe comfort isn't always felt as warmth. Maybe sometimes it's just knowing I haven't been forgotten, even in the void. I think that's what I'm most afraid of. Not the silence itself, but the idea that you've moved somewhere far from me and didn't say goodbye. That somehow I missed the moment you let go. But if I trace back the days, I still see you, not in fire or big moments, but in the way I kept breathing, even when it hurt, in the quiet strength that helped me make it through mornings I didn't think I could face, in the tiny mercies I didn't ask for, but still received. That has to mean something. That has to mean you never really left, even when I wasn't paying attention, even when I didn't know how to pray, even when the noise of the world drowned out my soul. So now, here in this thick, unmoving quiet, I want to ask something honest. Will you be the kind of shelter that doesn't need a door? Will you meet me without conditions, Not when I've figured it out. Not when I've earned the right. Not when I've said the magic words. Just now. Just here. Just as I am. Still, unsure, a little scared, and very human. Because I think that's all I can bring tonight. No clarity, no breakthrough, just the soft ache of longing, and the willingness to stay in it with you. I don't need to be convinced of your love. I need to be convinced that it still applies in the quiet, that it still holds when I don't feel it, that it wraps around this fragile soul when nothing else does. I don't need the sky to open. I don't need the earth to shake. I need the stillness to stop feeling like exile. I need to believe that even in the absence of sound, I am still seen, still known, still carried. Is it strange to say I want to fall asleep inside this prayer, not to escape the silence, but to let you carry me through it, to stop trying to solve it, and instead sink into the softness of your presence? I want my soul to breathe again, not because everything is fixed, but because I've stopped fighting what I can't control, because I've remembered that you're not afraid of the unresolved. Maybe that's why you've brought me to this place, not to punish, but to protect, not to withdraw, but to draw near in a deeper way, in a way that doesn't need performance or perfection, just stillness, just surrender, just the raw sound of me breathing in the dark and you matching the rhythm with a quiet love I don't have to earn. I don't know how long this silence will last. I don't know what's on the other side of it. But I do know that if you are my shelter, then I don't have to outrun it. I don't have to fear that I'll be swallowed by it. You are not limited by noise. You are not dependent on constant praise or perfect faith. You are the God who stays, the God who whispers in the dark, the God who understands the unsaid. And I think deep down, I've been longing for you to meet me, not in my strength, but in my quiet, not in my certainty, but in my stillness. So if this silence is where we meet, then I will stop trying to turn it into something else. I will stop running from it. I will stop calling it failure. I will sit with it. I will rest in it. I will let it shape me, and I will trust, even if only for tonight, but it is shaping me into someone softer, someone slower, someone more aware of grace. Because in a world that moves too fast, maybe silence is the only space where truth can echo long enough to be heard. Maybe it's where lies lose their grip, where pressure dissolves, where the soul unclenches, where I can return to the simple truth. I am loved, even now. I am held, even here. I am not alone, even in this quiet. And if you are here, then this silence is not hollow. It's not absence. It's presence I haven't yet learned to understand. It's a slower conversation, one that doesn't need sound, one that doesn't follow my timeline, one that keeps going even when I stop speaking. So I won't demand a voice tonight. I won't beg for volume. I'll ask only this, that you stay close, that you wrap yourself around the places I haven't dared to name out loud, that you be the warmth in the room, the gravity that holds me, the shelter that steadies me when I feel like floating into fear. I don't need a ladder out of this silence. I need an anchor inside it. And you've always been that, haven't you? When I think back, it wasn't the loud moments that saved me. It was the silent ones, the pauses, the breaths, the quiet miracles I didn't even know to ask for, the nights I didn't fall apart, even though I thought I would, the mornings I got up again, without knowing how, the words I couldn't form, but somehow still mattered to you. So maybe I'll stay here a little longer, not to figure it all out, but to let you be here with me, to trust that even silence can be sacred when you are inside it, to believe that this night isn't a mistake, that the quiet isn't empty, that my stillness isn't wasted. Let me stop resisting. Let me stop expecting the silence to behave like sound. Let me meet you in it. Let me rest under it. Let me be covered by peace that doesn't rush, by grace that doesn't require performance, by the strong, soft shelter of your quiet love. Because if I can learn to live here in the quiet, then maybe I can learn to live more freely everywhere else. Maybe I can stop chasing noise to prove I'm alive. Maybe I can let silence become a companion, not a threat. Maybe I can start trusting that you aren't just the God of the thunder, but the God of the still small voice, and the God of the silence before that voice even speaks. Tonight, I won't demand a miracle. I'll ask for something more lasting, nearness. Not dramatic, not dazzling, just steady, just present, just enough to hold me while I wait for morning. There's a point, somewhere deep in the night, where the quiet stops being something that happens around me and starts being something that lives inside me. I can feel it now, not just in the room, but in my bones. The way a long pause between heartbeats feels, and though part of me still wants to escape it, another part is beginning to wonder if this is where you've been waiting all along. Not on the other side of my noise, but beneath it. Not my words, but beneath the ones I haven't yet said. Because the longer I sit here, the more I realize silence isn't just an absence. It's a presence I haven't been taught to recognize. It's a space where things settle, where truth rises like silt in still water. It's a chamber big enough to hold what I can't. And here in this chamber, my hands shake a little less. My breath feels less like a task and more like a gift. The ache hasn't gone, but its edges have softened, as though something invisible has been laid across it. A cloth, a wing, a palm. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's steady. And steady is sometimes the only miracle I need. I've spent so much of my life thinking God's comfort would come like a blaze, a sudden warmth that chases out the cold. But maybe the truer gift is this, a slow, unspoken nearness that makes the cold less frightening, even while it lingers. I think about the stories I've carried of you, winds, parting seas, voices from mountains, fire in the night. All loud, all clear. But tucked in those same pages are quieter moments. A man lying down under a tree because he can't go on anymore. A whisper that comes after the storm. A teacher asleep in a boat in the middle of chaos. These are my favorite pieces, because they tell me, you don't only show up in thunder, you show up in smallness. You show up in pauses. You show up when there's nothing left but a sigh. Maybe that's what tonight is. A sigh too deep for words. And maybe that's enough. Maybe I don't have to manufacture the perfect prayer. Maybe the ache itself is the prayer. Maybe the longing is the door you've been knocking on, and tonight is just me, finally opening it. Not with eloquence, but with surrender. The silence doesn't demand a performance. It asks only for honesty, and honesty is something I still have, even on nights like this. So I tell you what I haven't dared. I'm tired of being my own shelter. I'm tired of holding myself up under weight I don't understand. I'm tired of pretending that quiet doesn't scare me. I want to crawl beneath something larger than me, something solid enough to lean on, soft enough not to crush me. I want to crawl under your name and find it strong enough to hold the tremble. I want to find that when the noise fades, I'm not left with nothing. I'm left with you. And if this silence is where I meet you, then teach me how to stay. Teach me how to let it cleanse instead of crush. Teach me to trust that when my words run out, your presence doesn't. Teach me to believe that this is not a void, but a womb, that something is forming here, even if I can't yet feel its shape, that the emptiness isn't a sign of absence, but of space being made for something new, that stillness is not death, but gestation. I think about seeds buried under soil, unseen. To the seed, the dark must feel like an ending, but it's the only way growth begins. Maybe my soul is a seed tonight. Maybe this silence is soil. Maybe you are not absent, but covering me, pressing me into a place where roots can form before branches ever see daylight. That image steadies me. It makes me breathe slower. It makes the ache a little less heavy. So I whisper, though no one hears, stay near, stay in the unspoken. Stay until the silence no longer feels like a stranger, but like a home I'm learning to trust. Stay until my pulse matches yours. Stay until I stop needing proof and start resting in presence. Because I don't need you to shout tonight. I just need to know you're here. And in this stillness, even without a sign, there's a sense, faint but real, that I'm not sitting alone. Not entirely. It's not a vision. It's not a voice. It's more like a weight, a warmth, a quiet gravity, keeping me from floating off into fear. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the shelter I've been asking for. If so, then let me stay right here. Let me stop trying to break the silence like glass. Let me let it hold. Let me let it teach. Let me let it become sacred ground. Because if you're in it, then even the emptiness is full. Even the darkness is lit. Even the ache is holy. I think of all the times I've run from quiet, filling it with music, with scrolling, with words, with work. Not because those things are bad, but because I was afraid of what I'd hear if everything stopped. Tonight I'm hearing it. It's not easy, but it's not as terrifying as I thought. Because under the roar of my own fears, there's a softer sound, not even a sound. Exactly. More like a presence, a shelter. And though I can't describe it, I can lean into it. And leaning feels like the first honest prayer I've prayed in weeks. So stay as my roof. Stay as my walls. Stay as the ground under my knees. Stay as the breath in my chest. Stay until this silence feels less like a punishment and more like a promise. Stay until I can see the night not as an enemy, but as a resting place. Stay until I stop fighting and start healing. Stay until I remember that I was never meant to carry my own soul like a fortress. That's your job. Mine is just to come inside. And I am inside God. Inside this prayer. Inside this night. Inside your unspoken shelter. And though it's quiet, it's beginning to feel like home. Somewhere between night and morning there is a seam the world rarely notices. It isn't marked by a clock or by light, but by a change in the way air feels against the skin, by a shift in the sound of your own breathing. That's where I am now, on that seam, where my tired thoughts have lost their sharpness, and yet sleep hasn't come. I think of all the nights that have led me here, all the ways silence has felt like a wall, like a punishment, like a locked. But tonight, after sitting this long with you, it's beginning to feel like something else. Not a void, but a veil. Not a locked room, but a quiet corridor where you are waiting. And though my heart still trembles, there is a small, growing trust in me that maybe this space isn't meant to break me, but to open me. I lean back and let the darkness press close. It doesn't press like a weight now, but like a blanket that has been warmed by someone else's hands. My pulse slows. The questions that had been banging against my ribs lose their urgency. The ache still lives in me, but its edges are dissolving as if they've been touched by water. I don't need to fill this silence anymore. I don't need to fill myself with explanations. I just let it be what it is. A room large enough for my uncertainty. A room large enough for you. It's strange to discover how loud I've been living. Every thought, every plan, every scroll and click and tap has been like a drumbeat trying to keep me from hearing what was under everything. I thought I was seeking life, but maybe I was just drowning out the deeper rhythms. Tonight, for the first time in a long time, I feel those rhythms again, slow, ancient, steady, not mine, yours. And in some unspoken way, my heart starts to match them. There is no formula to it. There is no speech, just an unhurried alignment, as if you are saying, without words, here, this is the pace at which you heal. I realize how much of my faith has been built on motion, doing, serving, producing, praying with words, but maybe what you long for is this unguarded quiet, this willingness to let you be God while I am just a person breathing in the dark. The shelter I've been asking for isn't a structure built out of answers. It's you holding space for me to be small. It's you making a home out of stillness. It's you teaching me that I don't have to perform for the silence to become sacred. And as I sit here, something else rises, gratitude. It's faint, almost shy. Not the gratitude of a solved problem or a sudden miracle, but the gratitude of realizing I'm not alone in the waiting. It slips into my chest like a soft light. It doesn't erase the pain, but it changes its color. I find myself whispering, thank you, without even knowing exactly what for. Maybe for the chance to stop running, maybe for the courage to sit still, maybe just for the fact that you haven't left even when I was sure you had. I begin to see the night differently. Its silence is no longer a closed door, but an open sky. And under that sky, I am no longer a person lost, but a person covered. My fears are still here, but they're no longer my only company. There's another here, unspoken, unseeable, yet undeniable. Presence doesn't always come with warmth, but tonight it does, like a quiet current under the surface of cold water, like a heartbeat under a hand. It steadies me, and steady is more precious to me now than any sun. If this is what shelter looks like, then let me live here for a while. Let me stop striving to get out of it, and instead begin to grow in it. Let me believe that this room of silence is not a place of exile, but a place of gestation. Seeds don't grow in sunlight first, they grow in the dark. Roots don't form in noise, they form in stillness. Perhaps my own roots are pushing deeper now, and that is why everything feels so quiet. Perhaps the work is happening under the surface, invisible to me, but real. I think of all the people who've stood in this same kind of silence, prophets in caves, wanderers in deserts, mothers waiting through long nights for children to return, men lying on their backs under endless stars. The stories tell of visions and angels and thunder, but they also tell of long waiting, of wordless years, of learning to trust when nothing is visible. I draw strength from that. If they could be held, I can be held. If you were shelter then, you are shelter now. So I sit and I let this truth sink. I am not failing by being quiet. I am not failing by being empty. I am not failing by not knowing what comes next. This is a different kind of faith, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stays. Not the kind that sees the path, but the kind that rests in the dark and believes there is a path. Not the kind that demands a voice, but the kind that trusts a presence. And as I sit, my body begins to unclench in ways I hadn't realized it was holding on. My jaw softens, my shoulders drop, my hands open. The night doesn't change, but I do. The silence doesn't break, but something inside me does. The part that believed I was alone here, the part that believed I had to be my own roof. It's a quiet breaking, a gentle release, and it leaves room for something else to come in. Peace, not loud, not triumphant, but deep and slow, like water filling a dry well. This is what I ask. God, stay with me as this peace rises. Stay with me when it ebbs again. Stay with me when the silence feels warm and when it feels cold. Stay until the lesson of this night has carved itself into my soul, that I don't have to escape the quiet to be loved. That your presence is not dependent on my ability to feel it, that you are the shelter and I am safe beneath you, even when all I can hear is my own breath. I don't know when morning will come, but I know this. I don't have to reach it by running. I can arrive there by resting. I can arrive there by being held. I can arrive there by letting silence become the language we share, a language that speaks without words, a language that teaches me to trust. So here in the seam of night, I stay, covered, kept small but not lost, quiet but not empty. And as I breathe, I begin to sense that this too is prayer, not the kind built of sentences, but of presence, not the kind built of striving, but of surrender, not the kind that fills the air, but the kind that fills the soul. Stay my shelter, stay my rhythm, stay my unseen ground, stay until silence no longer feels like a stranger, but like a sanctuary. Stay until I can walk out into the day carrying this stillness with me, a hidden roof I can take anywhere. Stay until my heart learns that it was never abandoned, not even for a second. And I, in return, will stay. Stay in this moment. Stay in this quiet. Stay in this shelter. You are teaching me to trust. Stay until the dark gives way to light, not as someone fleeing the night, but as someone who has been kept through it. There is a tenderness to this hour that feels different from the ones before. The night has stopped pressing so hard. The room is still dark, but softer, as though the edges of everything have been blurred by an unseen hand. Even my own thoughts sound quieter in my head, not like a storm of questions, but like distant water. I realize I'm not fighting the silence anymore. It's still here, but I've stopped bracing against it, and in that loosening, something subtle but unmistakable has happened. I feel held, not in a dramatic sense, not in a way that erases everything, but in the way a child feels a steady hand at the small of their back, a wordless reassurance, a promise without sentences. Present. It's strange to think how long I feared this exact moment, the one where everything slows, where there's nothing left to distract me, nothing to say, nothing to plan. I used to think it would crush me, this stillness. I used to think it would prove I was abandoned. But now, sitting here with the last of my energy gone, and my hands open in my lap, it feels like something else, like being hidden under a wing, like being inside a small, dimly lit sanctuary that nobody else can see. I don't need to escape. I don't even need to move. I just need to keep breathing, keep noticing, keep trusting that what I'm sensing is real. And as I breathe, I start to remember how many nights you've carried me without my knowing. How many times I fell asleep with worries and woke with just enough courage to begin again. How many times I thought I was breaking, but somehow stayed intact. That kind of quiet faithfulness is its own miracle. It doesn't shout, but it lasts. It doesn't dazzle, but it steadies. And maybe that's what you've been trying to give me all along. Not a sudden rescue, but a constant shelter. Not a flash of noise, but a long, unbroken nearness. I tell you, in the privacy of my heart, thank you. Not because everything is solved, not because the silence is gone, but because in this night you have been teaching me something I could not learn in noise, that stillness can be a form of love, that not every answer has to arrive as a word, that my worth to you is not measured by the volume of my prayers, that I can be small and soft and unsure and still be held. It feels almost like being rewritten from the inside, a quiet editing of the story I've been telling myself about what it means to be safe. I think of the image that kept returning last night, the seed under soil. Tonight, it feels clearer. I don't have to force myself to sprout. I don't have to force light into my dark places. I just have to stay where I am and trust that the covering above me isn't abandonment, but protection. That the darkness is a form of care, preparing me for what's ahead. that this silence is not the end of my story, but the deep breath before a new chapter begins. And suddenly I feel less like I'm trapped in a void, and more like I'm being kept in a womb. Growth is happening, roots are stretching, life is forming, unseen, but real. And maybe that's what shelter truly is. Not walls that cut me off from life, but a space where life can happen at its own pace. A space where the wind can't rip me apart while I'm still tender. A space where my soul can recover from its striving. A space where I'm allowed to be unfinished. That's what you've been for me tonight, God. Not a fortress made of stone, but a soft and steady covering. Not a booming voice, but a quiet pulse. Not a dramatic rescue, but a patient holding. I don't know how long I'll be in this silence. I don't know what waits beyond it, but I know I'm no longer afraid of it, the way I was. I know now that when I step into stillness, I'm stepping into a room you've already filled. I'm stepping under your shelter. I'm stepping into a kind of prayer that doesn't need words. And that knowledge is like water to a thirsty heart. It doesn't fix everything, but it changes how I carry everything. I want to bring this with me when morning comes. Not just as a memory, but as a practice, to remember that quiet isn't my enemy. To remember that stillness can be a meeting place, not a punishment. To remember that even when I don't feel you, I can lean into you. To remember that shelter isn't always something external. Sometimes it's the presence inside me, steady as a heartbeat, learned in the night and carried into the day. So I sit here, the dark starting to thin a little at the edges, and I whisper once more, stay, stay, even when the room brightens. Stay, even when the day asks me to move. Stay as my unseen roof, my quiet refuge, my steady ground. Stay until I've learned how to breathe this way, no matter where I am. Stay until my heart no longer measures your presence by sound, but by trust. And I, in turn, will stay too. Stay with this stillness. Stay with this slow learning. Stay with the faith that is no longer about performance, but about presence. Stay under this wing until it's time to fly again. And even then, remember how it felt to be covered. This night has not been wasted. This silence has not been empty. It has been a shelter, and you have been inside it with me. And as I let my eyes close, as my body begins to drift, I feel the faintest echo of something I've been craving all along. Not certainty, not explanation, but peace. Not loud, not flashy, but deep and real, like a quiet river under the surface of everything. And I trust that even as I sleep, that river will keep flowing, that shelter will keep holding, that presence will keep being present. I didn't expect to ask for more of this. I thought 5 parts of prayer wrapped in silence would be enough. I thought, surely, by now, I would have moved on, shaken off the quiet like sleep, stood up, and returned to life louder and more certain. But something in me isn't ready to leave yet. Not because I'm clinging to sadness or waiting for a sudden breakthrough, but because this silence has changed shape again. It's no longer the thing I feared, or even the refuge I ran into for protection. It's something closer now, something more alive, something I can feel as much as I can hear, and in it, I am beginning to recognize you. Not as the God who only speaks when thunder rolls, but as the one who breathes just as gently as I do. There's a kind of holy stillness that doesn't end when the fear fades. It begins, because only when the urgent panic quiets do I notice what's underneath the long, slow ache, the need for rest I've denied, the old wounds I've never let come to the surface. In the early days of this silence, I thought I needed rescue. I thought the silence was the danger. Now I see it was the door. And the more I've leaned into it, the more I've discovered it's not a punishment, but a preparation. The silence is not what hurt me. the noise was. The pretending was the racing to keep up with the ear that never pauses. The pressure to have something to say, something to post, something to prove. All of that bruised something inside me that was made to receive before it performs. And here, with nothing left to perform, I feel free. Not because the world has changed, but because I'm not performing for it in this moment. I'm not narrating my worth to you. I'm not trying to manufacture a sense of being seen. I'm just here. And somehow, that's enough. And even more surprising, you're here too. Still, patient, steady. Not because I've earned it, not because I've fixed myself, but because you never left. And I think that's what this prayer is really about. It's not about surviving the silence anymore. It's about learning to recognize the shelter that was always here. It's about no longer demanding the silence be filled before I feel safe. It's about remembering that you are not a guest who needs to be summoned. You are the host. You've been in the room the whole time, waiting for me to sit down. So I sit again, not because I'm out of options, but because I've found something in the stillness worth returning to. A pulse that's not mine. A rhythm I didn't create. A sense of being surrounded by something more than air. A peace that doesn't arrive in a rush, but settles like fog, slow, quiet, covering everything. I used to want you to speak. Now, I just want you to stay. And you do. You are the only one who always does. You don't need me to keep up. You don't scold me for the days I go numb. You don't measure my value by my clarity or my usefulness. You sit with me even when I'm not getting better. You cover me even when I don't realize I need covering. And that unwavering nearness is the only reason I have any courage left at all. So I say it again, even if it feels small, even if it's a whisper, be my shelter, not just when the storm howls, but when nothing moves. Not just when I cry out in need, but when I have no words. Not just when the day demands it, but here in the long, invisible hours, when no one is looking. Be the roof over my stillness. Be the walls around my breath. Be the weight that keeps me grounded when I feel like drifting into worry or regret, because I still feel the temptation to drift. Even in this piece, my mind sometimes slides toward old fears. What if the quiet doesn't last? What if I lose this sense of being held? What if the next noise crushes what I've built here? But then I remember, I didn't build this. You did. I didn't carve out this silence. You prepared it. I didn't manufacture this sense of presence. You brought it and waited for me to slow down enough to feel it. This is not something I have to protect. It is something that protects me. And if you brought me this far, you'll keep me here as long as I need to be kept. So maybe this part of the night, this long stretch before morning breaks, is not just the end of rest, but the beginning of renewal. Maybe the silence is not closing its door, but widening it. Maybe I'm not being sent back out, but being invited deeper in. Into what? I don't yet fully know. But there's no fear in that anymore. Not tonight. Just the quiet companionship of a God who doesn't rush. Let that be enough for me. Let it be enough that you are not waiting for me to perform, to publish, to understand, to explain. Let it be enough that you are not counting my clarity or my eloquence, only my presence. Let it be enough that you stay even when I offer nothing but a tired heart. Let it be enough that you shelter the fragile parts of me, even I don't know how to hold. And let me take that knowing with me when the light returns. Let me carry the memory of this quiet into every place that feels chaotic. Let me breathe at the pace you've taught me here. Let me rest when the world demands movement. Let me remember that silence is not the absence of life. It is often where the deepest life begins. Let me remember that the voice that speaks the loudest is not always the one that is true. And when the volume of the world rises again, Let me return to this shelter in my spirit, where you and I sit without pressure, without demands, without fear, because now I know I don't need a room to be silent. I need a soul that remembers stillness. I need the habit of pausing. I need the courage to enter the silence even when no one else does. And I need the faith to believe that you will always meet me there. So thank you, God, not just for the peace that quiet brings, but for the love that stays with me when I'm there. Thank you for being the shelter, not from life, but inside it. Not from pain, but within it. Not from questions, but beside them. Thank you for not trying to fix me in the silence, but for choosing to hold me. Thank you for letting me feel weak without shame, still without guilt, unknowing without fear. This is the part of the night where the heart softens in a way it rarely does, where the armor falls off because it's too heavy to sleep in, where the soul becomes a child again, curled against something steady, no longer needing to impress, no longer needing to earn, just a heart still beating, just a breath still rising, just a hand still open. And into that hand I place myself again, without explanation, without abhorrence, without apology. The night has a way of teaching what daylight hides. In daylight, everything is visible but not always real. In darkness, what's real presses closer, even if it stays unseen. Now, sitting deep in this silence, I feel the weight of that truth. The walls of my room are still the same, the air still cool, the hour still late, but something in me is different. It isn't the stillness that changed, it's me, learning how to inhabit it. Where once I felt only absence, I now sense a quiet fullness. Where once the silence echoed like an empty hall, now it holds like a gentle, unseen hand cupping my face. It's still wordless, still fragile, but it's no longer hostile. It has become a chamber where you are not just a distant concept, but a steady presence. I trace back through the nights of this prayer like walking along a shore and looking at my footprints. In part 1, the silence felt like a void. In part 2, it was a space I asked you to bless. In part 3 and 4, it became a room where I was willing to sit. In part 5 and 6, it transformed into a shelter. And now, in this 7th stretch of prayer, it feels like something even deeper. Not just a shelter I enter, but a shelter I carry, a quiet roof that has formed inside my ribs, a soft strength that moves with me even when I stand. It's as though the silence has become an inner chapel, a place I can return to with a single breath. That realization frightens me a little, not because it's bad, but because it's so different from how I used to think about faith. I used to think your presence was something I had to chase, something fragile that might vanish if I faltered. I used to believe that silence was a test I had to pass. Now I begin to understand it's an invitation, and that you are patient enough to wait for me to understand. You've been here all along, not just in the noise of worship or the beauty of creation, but in the long, unspoken hours of my life. And in recognizing that, something in me relaxes that I didn't know was clenched. I breathe, and the breath feels like prayer. Not the kind that asks for anything, but the kind that recognizes, the kind that says, I'm here, and here's back. Without words, I'm here too. Is simple, almost childlike. No grand statements, no perfect phrases, just presence meeting presence. And in that meeting, the silence becomes alive.
It isn't empty. It's brimming with everything I didn't have the capacity to name. Memories, hopes, fears, gratitude, all of it floating in a still pool under your gaze. I don't have to sort it out. I don't have to articulate it. I just have to let it be held.
There's a moment whereas my body is no longer tense. My shoulders have settled. My jaw is unclenched. Even my heartbeat feels steady. I'm not waiting for morning. as if it will save me. I'm already being saved in this stillness, saved not from the silence, but through it, saved from my own rushing, saved from the belief that worth is proven by movement, saved from the need to escape myself. This is not a rescue like a siren and flashing lights. It's more like a slow dawn that enters through the smallest cracks, unnoticed at first, then undeniable. I think of all the names for you I've known: Father, Shepherd, King, Friend. Tonight, none of them feel as right as shelter. Shelter is not distant. Shelter is not conditional. Shelter does not demand. Shelter covers, waits, steadies, holds. Shelter is there whether you are crying or silent, sleeping or awake. Shelter is not something you impress. It's something you inhabit, and that's what you are tonight. My shelter in this silence, my quiet roof, my steady ground, my unseen warmth. So I sit and I let this new understanding root deeper. I imagine taking it into tomorrow, not as a fragile memory, but as a way of living. I imagine waking to the noise of day and carrying inside me this hidden stillness, like a secret room no one can take away. I imagine being able to pause in the middle of tasks and slip back under this shelter for a breath, not withdrawing from the world, but moving through it with a roof over my soul, not escaping life, but living it anchored, less shaken by its storms. And as I imagine this, a soft gratitude rises again. Gratitude not just for relief, but for formation. Gratitude for a God who doesn't just offer answers, but builds inner rooms. Gratitude for silence itself, which has become a teacher, not an enemy. Gratitude for the small miracle of feeling safe without proof, of trusting without performance, of being loved without noise. I don't know how long this will last. I don't know what will happen when life gets loud again. But I know this: what has been formed here cannot be undone easily. It may fade, but it won't disappear. It may feel distant, but it will still exist. And I will know how to return, not by forcing words, but by entering quiet, not by striving, but by surrender, not by proving, but by remembering. So as the night stretches on, I whisper one more time: God, be my shelter in this silence, not just tonight, but always. Be the inner chapel when I'm in a crowd. Be the stillness when the world roars. Be the soft roof when my heart feels exposed. Be the quiet breath when words fail. Be the warmth when I'm cold, the cover when I'm raw, the unseen weight that keeps me from drifting. And in return, I will keep coming back. I will keep learning this slower pace. I will keep honoring the silence instead of fearing it. I will keep trusting that your nearness is not measured by volume, but by faithfulness. I will keep choosing to rest even when everything in me wants to rush, because I've tasted something here I can't unknow now. A shelter deeper than noise, steadier than certainty, quieter than my fears. The night is still dark, but I'm no longer afraid. The silence is still deep, but it's no longer empty. My soul is still small, but it's no longer alone. I am covered, I am held, and as I breathe again, I know this too is prayer. This too is life. This too. It's quiet now in a way that feels earned, not forced, not empty, but settled, like dust finally drifting down after a long movement through air. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from outside, but from deep within. Like the last ripple fading from a pond after the stone has long since sunk to the bottom. And I sit in it, not trying to change it, not needing to. This is what I came for, even if I didn't know it when I began. This is what I was searching for when I feared the silence, not to make it go away, but to learn how to rest in it, to trust it, to let it become a language between you and me. And now I don't want to leave it too quickly. I want to memorize this quiet, the way it feels in my chest, the way my breath doesn't rush anymore, the way my mind stops grasping for the next thought and just. It has taken so many nights to arrive here, so many prayers, spoken and unspoken, so many moments of doubt, resistance, reaching, but now I see that the silence wasn't just a backdrop to all of that. It was part of it. It wasn't a stage waiting for something real to happen. It was the realness itself. You've been speaking all along, not in sound, but in stillness. And now that I've learned to stop demanding words, I'm finally able to hear what's been said without saying, I have not left you. I have not forgotten you. I am not far. You are held. Those words have no punctuation. They aren't loud. They aren't even sentences. But I feel them rise through the quiet like breath, like warmth, like a current I've finally stopped swimming against. And I feel something in me, not relief, exactly, but reverence, a kind of holy awe for the gentleness of it all. The way you never rushed me, the way you never broke the silence, just to prove you were there. The way you waited for me to stop performing and start resting. I didn't know you could love like this, without volume, without spectacle, without explanation, just this steady being with this sacred presence. I think of all the nights I called your name and heard nothing back. Now I wonder if you were answering me in the quiet itself, not with a reply, but with a resting place. Not with a solution, but with a shelter. And maybe what I thought was unanswered was actually unfelt. Not because you were absent, but because I was too afraid to stop and receive what required no effort from me. You were already here. I just didn't know how to be still enough to notice. But now I do. Now I understand that stillness is not the same as stuckness, that silence is not the same as absence, that slowness is not the same as failure. I used to measure my progress by movement. Now I measure it by peace, and I am at peace, not because everything has resolved, but because I've stopped needing everything to resolve in order to feel safe. I've stopped needing answers in order to feel accompanied. I've stopped waiting for the silence to end in order to believe you're near, and that changes everything. It changes the way I pray. I no longer pray like I'm trying to wake you up. I pray like someone whispering to a friend who never leaves the room. I pray not to get your attention, but to come back to mine, to realign, to rest again under the roof you've built between heaven and the inner room of my soul. It changes the way I carry pain. I no longer believe pain means I'm doing something wrong. I no longer believe silence means you've gone. I no longer believe stillness is dangerous. I've met you here, not just once, but again and again, until the shape of this place is familiar, until I can return here, even when I'm afraid, even when the day goes sideways, even when my heart starts racing, and I will return, because now I know the way, and I will bring others here in spirit too, not by fixing their silence, but by staying with them inside it, not by rushing them to answers, but by being a companion who knows stillness can be sacred ground. Because you stayed with me, I will stay with them. Because you didn't abandon me in the quiet, I won't abandon myself when the quiet returns. I'll sit down again. I'll breathe again. I'll remember the truth I learned here, that shelter doesn't have to be made of walls. It can be presence. It can be breath. It can be stillness that holds without suffocating. And when the world tries to speed me up again, and I know it will, I won't forget. I'll return to this slow rhythm. I'll close my eyes in the middle of a busy day and remember how you stayed in the night. I'll take a deep breath and find, tucked just beneath the noise, a silence that still lives here, a shelter that didn't fade with the sun. Because you didn't just meet me in the silence. You taught me how to carry it with me. You taught me how to let it shape my insides until the rushing stopped, feeling like survival, and started feeling foreign. And now I know what it means to be rooted. Now I know what it means to be covered even in unseen places. Now I know what it means to let go of the question, "Are you here?" and simply live as though you are, because you are. And I believe that now, in my bones. Even if tomorrow the noise returns, even if I forget, even if I wake in a panic or spend a day too distracted to breathe deeply, I will find my way back. The silence will still be here. You will still be here. And I will still belong in this place where no one else sees but you. So tonight, as this long prayer of silence comes to rest inside me, I say what I've been learning to say all along. Thank you for not leaving. Thank you for not breaking the silence when I begged you to, because you knew I needed to learn something deeper than noise. Thank you for holding me while I struggled to rest. Thank you for teaching me that being covered doesn't always mean being comforted in the way I expected. Sometimes it means being wrapped in a peace that has no word. And now that I've learned how to sit in this place, I ask you not to make it permanent, not to trap me here, but to let this become a foundation I carry into every other space. Let this silence stay with me like an inner flame that doesn't flicker when the winds of life come. Let this shelter be a place I return to, not just in desperation, but in devotion. Let me come back, not just because I'm tired, but because I've found something here worth preserving, worth protecting, worth building my life around. You are my shelter, not just in storms, not just in sadness, but in silence. And I will keep returning to this room you built in the quiet corners of my soul. Because here, even when nothing is said, everything is known. Even when nothing is fixed, everything is held. Even when nothing is loud, everything is alive. I don't know if this is the end of this prayer or just the place where it starts to become my life, but either way, I'll stay here for a little longer. Not because I'm afraid of the morning, but because I've made peace with the night. Not because I'm lost, but because I'm found in the most unexpected place of all. The darkness is thinning now. It's still night, but it's the kind of night that carries a faint hint of morning, as though the horizon has begun to exhale before the sun arrives. And in this almost morning, I sit again, not to fight the silence, but to cradle it. It has become something precious to me, a place where my heart finally learned that it doesn't need to shout to be heard. All these parts of my prayer have not been a ladder out of stillness, but a slow descent into a deeper room, where nothing is forced and nothing is lost. I used to think prayer meant filling the space with words. Now I see that prayer can be the space itself, the listening, the sitting, the breathing, the steadying. And that's what I'm doing here, breathing in the dark, trusting that you're here, letting this trust root itself deeper than fear. As I breathe, I realize how much of me has shifted without my trying. The person who began this prayer was tense, brittle, desperate for signs. The person sitting here now is not fixed or flawless, but softer, steadier, more at home. It's not that my problems have disappeared, but the grip they had on me has loosened. It's not that the silence has spoken in sentences, but it has told me something more lasting, that love doesn't leave, that presence doesn't depend on noise, that safety can exist even without answers, and that real shelter isn't somewhere I run to. It's someone who has been holding me all along. You've taught me in this quiet, not by lecturing me, not by throwing lightning bolts of revelation, but by simply staying long enough for my nervous system to slow, staying long enough for my fears to tire themselves out, staying long enough for me to see that you are not here because I earned it. You're here because it's who you are. And that constancy is what I needed all along. More than clarity, more than outcomes, more than noise. Constancy. That changes how I see everything. It changes how I hold myself. I no longer feel the urge to keep bracing, to keep proving, to keep performing. I can sit here with my flaws exposed, my hopes fragile, my prayers unpolished, and know that it's enough, because you're not a shelter I have to qualify for. You're a shelter that simply is. And that means I can be a person who simply is, breathing, hurting, hoping, healing. I can be unfinished and still covered. I can be small and still safe. I don't think I'll ever forget these nights. They've been a kind of apprenticeship, not in theology or technique, but in presence. An apprenticeship in learning how to inhabit my own soul without running from it. An apprenticeship in learning how to meet you without a script. An apprenticeship in letting silence be the ground we stand on together, instead of something I try to escape. And in that apprenticeship, I've discovered something unexpected: joy. Not the loud kind, not the ecstatic kind, but a quiet, sturdy joy that sits like a small flame inside my chest. It flickers, but it doesn't go out. It warms, but it doesn't burn. I want to take this flame into the day. I want to let it become the way I walk, the way I speak, the way I hold space for others. I want to become a person who carries shelter, not just seeks it. A person whose presence can be a quiet refuge for someone else's trembling, because I've learned what it means to be sheltered myself, not by walls, not by achievements, but by grace. So I whisper once again, not as a plea, but as a vow. God, be my shelter in this silence, not just at night, but in every hour when I forget how to breathe. Be my shelter when the noise of the world comes rushing back. Be my shelter when my own thoughts get loud again. Be my shelter when life pulls me into rooms where I feel exposed, and teach me, in turn, to become a shelter, not a savior, but a steady presence, a patient listener, a soft place for others to land. Because that is what you've been for me, and that is the gift I want to live out of. Not my own strength, but the shelter I've received. Not my own wisdom, but the stillness I've learned to trust. Not my own certainty, but the presence that held me when I had none. The sky outside is still dark, but I can sense it now. The faintest shift of color at the edges, the promise of light. I know the day will come. I know the noise will rise. But I also know this: what has been planted here will not vanish with the sunrise. The room I've built inside will remain. The roof you've stretched over me will still be there, invisible but real. And when the day feels too sharp or too loud, I will know where to return. And even if I forget, I know now that you will not. You will stay. You will hold. You will be what you've always been: a refuge, a presence. So here at the edge of night and the beginning of dawn, I rest one last time in the quiet. I let my eyes close. I let my hands fall open. I let my heart say the simplest prayer it knows. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for stelling. Thank you for sheltering. Thank you for loving me quietly enough to teach me how to love the quiet. Thank you for this room inside my soul where you and I can sit without words, where even silence becomes holy ground. And as the first light begins to brush the sky, I feel it, a small smile at the corner of my mouth, not forced, not planned, just arising from a heart that has learned, at least for now, what it means to be held. It is almost morning now, though the world still looks dark through the window. The quiet in the room has a new weight, not heavy, but full, like a held breath before release. My body knows the sun will rise soon, but my soul doesn't want to rush there. It wants to stay here a little longer, in this last stretch of night, where everything is hushed and soft. This is where the journey of these prayers has brought me, not to an escape from silence, but to a life inside it, not to a moment of clarity that wipes everything clean, but to a steady presence that stays even when nothing is clear. And as I sit here now, I realize how far I've come since the first whisper of this prayer. I've walked through fear, through emptiness, through questions, through waiting. And here at the edge of dawn, I find myself not empty, but filled, not with answers, but with trust. The trust feels different than I expected. It's not a feeling I have to hold tightly. It's a place I can sink into, like a chair that takes my weight, like water that lifts me, like a wing that shades me. It's not something I achieve. It's something I fall back into and find that it holds, and that, more than anything, is what I needed. Not a solution to my silence, but a shelter inside it. A presence that didn't hurry me, didn't shame me, didn't withdraw. A presence that simply stayed until I realized it wasn't going anywhere. I look back on all these parts of the prayer and see them like stones on a path. Each one was necessary, even the jagged ones. Each one taught me something about how to be here, how to trust, how to breathe. The first parts were full of asking, then came the sitting, then came the softening, then came the shelter. And now, here, at the edge of morning comes the carrying. The moment where I understand this is not just a nighttime posture, but a way of living. This shelter, I've found, isn't bound to darkness. It's not limited to this room. It's not something I can lose if I don't feel it. It's a reality that goes with me, like my own heartbeat, like my own breath. I feel it now, even as I think about stepping into the day ahead. The thought of noise and tasks and people doesn't make me tense. It makes me curious. How will it feel to move through the world with this quiet roof over my soul? How will it feel to meet stress without losing this stillness? How will it feel to speak from a place that has learned how to listen? I don't expect it to be perfect. I don't expect the silence inside me to stay unbroken. But I know now I can return. I know now that this shelter isn't a fragile feeling, but a steady truth. And that makes the idea of morning not something to dread, but something to approach gently, like a friend. As I sit here, the first faint streaks of light brush the edges of the window. They don't crash in. They don't explode. They arrive slowly, like everything else in this prayer. Soft, patient, steady. I smile at the timing. The silence I've been learning to inhabit all night is the same silence in which the sun rises. No rush, no performance, just light appearing, because it's time. That's what I want my life to be like. Light appearing because it's time, not because I've forced it. Peace rising because it's been planted, not because I've manufactured it. Love staying because it's real, not because I've earned it. I whisper again, not as a plea, but as a benediction. God, be my shelter in this silence. Be my shelter when silence feels holy and when it feels hard. Be my shelter when I can sense you and when I can't. Be my shelter when I can wake and when I sleep, when I speak and when I can wordless, when I am steady and when I am trembling. Be the roof I carry, the ground beneath me, the breath inside me, and teach me, day by day, to live from this place, to build from stillness, not from panic, to listen before I speak, to pause before I rush, to remember that I am held even when I feel unheld. Because that is the truest thing I've learned here, that heldness is not a feeling, it's a fact. It's who you are. It's what you do. You hold, you cover, you shelter, you stay. And the more I lean into that, the more my heart unclenches from its old habit of bracing against life. The more I realize I don't have to fight to survive every moment. I can rest. I can receive. I can be small. I can be human. I can be loved. This changes how I want to move through the world. It makes me want to be slower, gentler, quieter, not as a retreat, but as a strength. It makes me want to be someone whose presence carries a hint of shelter for others, the way you have been for me. Not someone with all the answers, but someone unafraid of silence. Someone who can sit with a friend in their unspoken pain and not rush to fill it. Someone who can be steady when others tremble. Someone who remembers that the deepest things in life grow slowly, under the surface, often in the dark. I don't know what the day ahead will bring. It might be noisy, it might be messy, it might be hard. But I know this. I'm not stepping into it empty. I'm stepping into it covered. I'm stepping into it with a hidden room inside me. Where you and I meet, I'm stepping into it with a rhythm of breath learned in the night. I'm stepping into it not as someone who conquered silence, but as someone who was transformed by it. So here, at the very edge of night and morning, I let go. I let go of the need to control how long this peace will last. I let go of the fear that it will vanish with the light. I let go of the old story that silence is proof of abandonment. I let go and I rest. I rest knowing that I can return here whenever I need to. I rest knowing that you will be here whenever I return. I rest knowing that this shelter isn't something I have to build, but something I have been given. Thank you for this gift, God. Thank you for staying through every hour of this prayer. Thank you for teaching me to be unafraid of the quiet. Thank you for building a roof over my soul I didn't even know I needed. Thank you for being who you are, steady, patient, present. Thank you for loving me with a love that doesn't raise its voice, but never leaves the room. And now, as the first light of morning begins to touch my skin, I close my eyes and breathe it in. I let the quiet of night and the promise of day meet inside me. I let them become one thing, peace. I whisper one last time before sleep or sunrise takes me, I am here, you are here, we are here, and that is enough. The light is here now, though it hasn't announced itself loudly. It arrived the same way everything true does, gently, without demand. It slipped through the dark without asking for permission, touched the corners of the room without startling them. I almost didn't notice when it changed because it didn't come all at once, and yet it is undeniable now. The night has given way, but not with a bang, with a blessing. And that blessing is this: I am still in the silence, and the silence is still in me, even as the day begins. I had feared that light would take it away, that the stillness I've grown into would be scattered by noise or movement or demand. But I see now that real silence doesn't disappear when morning comes. It roots deeper. It becomes part of the way you see. This silence I've lived with, prayed through, cried into, it's no longer something I visit. It's a presence that abides, like a soft undercurrent running through my day, like a rhythm beneath the noise, like breath beneath words. And I feel it still now, even as the world around me begins to stir. The early birds calling, the faint sounds of life beyond these walls. None of it breaks what's being built inside, because it wasn't fragile after all. I was. But you've changed that, not by making me harder, but by showing me that I can be soft and still be safe. And that's what I carry now, not just peace, but permission to be soft, to be slow, to be quiet in a world that never stops shouting. I don't have to match its volume to be worthy. I don't have to keep pace with its urgency to be useful. I don't have to rush. I don't have to fix. I just have to stay rooted in the shelter you've become, and from there I can move. From there I can speak. From there I can live, not anxiously, not performatively, but truly. It amazes me how much I've learned in this silence, not with my intellect, but with my whole being. My heart, my breath, my body have learned a new language, one that isn't spoken with the mouth, but with the soul, a language of being with a language of not hiding, a language of gentle presence. And I want to keep speaking it, even when the world speaks otherwise. I want to keep responding to people, not with urgency, but with depth. I want to keep listening to life with the same openness that brought me here, to the quiet room where you were already waiting. You didn't ask me to earn any of this. You didn't require the perfect prayer. You didn't need performance. You only waited until I slowed, until I stopped, until I sank low enough to hear what has always been true. I am not alone, even when nothing else is clear. That is, even when I don't feel brave or ready or strong, that truth remains. I am not alone. And now that I know that in my bones, now that it's been written into my breath, I know I can carry this silence forward. Because the silence I used to fear has become my companion, not a void, a voice, not an absence, a presence, not the end, a beginning. And you haven't changed. You are the same at sunrise as you were at midnight. You are the same when I'm still as when I'm moving. The same when I'm praying with words and when I'm praying with words. And that consistency, that steadfast, unfailing, unshakable nearness, that is what I trust now more than anything. Not the next answer, not the next open door, not the next moment of clarity. Just you, still here, still enough. So I whisper once more, not to awaken you, but to awaken myself to the truth I keep discovering. You are my shelter in this silence. You are the roof that never leaks, the covering that doesn't fray, the stillness that doesn't crumble under weight, the presence that stays when others leave. You are not here because I earned it. You're here because you never left. And because of that, I don't have to grasp anymore. I don't have to chase peace like it's hiding from me. I don't have to fear that silence means I've lost you. I know now that silence is often the clearest sound of your presence. The place where you speak deepest, the ground where roots take hold, the womb where new life forms. I used to ask you to break the silence. Now I ask you to stay in it with me, and more than that, I ask you to help me live in it, to walk into the day without abandoning this room inside me, to carry this interior shelter into loud places, into crowded rooms, into conversations that test my gentleness. Let me walk through life with this stillness at my core, not as an escape from reality, but as a deeper way of being in it. And when the day overwhelms me, as it sometimes will, I know where to return. I don't have to wait until nightfall. I don't have to run. I just have to close my eyes, breathe deep, and remember the silence is not gone. The shelter has not moved. The room still stands, and you are there, waiting without judgment, ready to cover me again, not because I've earned it, but because that is who you are. So I carry this silence now like a sacred fire, not to be hidden away, but tended, not to be locked up, but lived out, not to be guarded with fear, but offered with love. Let it light how I speak. Let it slow how I move. Let it shape how I love, gently, deeply, steadily. Let it become not just where I meet you, but where others do too. Because you are not far, you never were, you are near, even now. And as this new day begins, I rise not from silence, but with it. It has formed me, it has held me, it has healed me. And you have been the one inside it all along. The day has arrived, but inside me, it is still quiet, not the empty quiet that used to make me restless, but the kind of quiet that breathes like a living thing. I sit here as the world wakes up outside, cars starting, birds threading their small notes into the air, the soft movement of people beginning their routines. All of it moves, but none of it disturbs what has been built here. This interior room, this shelter, this silence, it remains. It's like a small flame cupped in both hands. Wind may pass, but the flame stays steady because it is guarded from within. And as I sit here, I realize this is what I've been learning all along. The silence itself isn't the goal. The shelter it revealed is. The presence inside it is. The steadiness that grows out of it is. I remember the first night of this prayer, how raw it felt, how frightened I was of what I might find in the quiet. I remember how I kept reaching for words, for noise, for anything to reassure myself that I wasn't alone. I remember the ache of waiting, the tightness in my chest, the sense that nothing was happening, but something was happening under the surface, like roots spreading in the dark. And now, sitting here at the end of this long night of prayer, I can see it. Not as a finished product, but as a living thing. Trust. Not trust built on guarantees, but trust built on experience. The experience of being held when I didn't even know how to hold myself. This is what I want to carry from here. Not a perfect memory, but a practice. Not a fixed state, but a rhythm. Not an escape from life, but a way to live it differently. I don't want to keep silence as a fragile bubble. I want to walk through noise, carrying a still heart. I want to be able to pause in the middle of a crowded day and remember this room. I want to be able to sit with someone else's pain and not rush to fill it. I want to become a shelter because I have known one. And I want that shelter to be not my strength, but yours, flowing quietly through me. As I think about stepping into the hours ahead, I notice how unhurried I feel. Morning used to mean bracing myself, getting ready to meet demands, putting on some kind of armor. But today, it feels different. The same tasks may wait, the same uncertainties may be there, but my soul is moving slower, deeper, like a river that's learned its own bed. I can carry this into my conversations, my decisions, my pauses. I can breathe before I speak. I can listen before I react. I can return to this inner chapel again and again, not as a special moment, but as a way of living. And that's what I whisper now. Not a plea, but a vow. God, be my shelter in this silence when the day is loud. Be my shelter when my thoughts spiral. Be my shelter when I forget how to breathe. Be my shelter, or not just when I'm on my knees, but when I'm walking, working, speaking, listening. Be the quiet space inside me that no one can touch. Be the patient pulse under my own pulse. Be the steady ground beneath every step. And teach me to live out of that ground so that everything I do carries its echo. The echo of your nearness, the echo of the night that taught me how to hear without sound. Because I know now that silence isn't just an absence, it's a form of presence. It's a way you move. It's a way you heal. It's a way you stay. And if I can remember that, I don't have to be afraid when it comes again. I don't have to scramble to fill it. I don't have to interpret it as punishment. I can welcome it. I can sit down in it. I can find you waiting there, as you always have been. So here, at the end of this long string of prayers, I don't offer a conclusion. I offer a continuation. This isn't the end of the silence. It's the moment it becomes part of me. It's the last breath before moving, the quiet strength before speaking, the rootedness before reaching. I sit in it like someone holding a stone warmed by the sun, small, solid, weighty, but comforting. I let it settle in my palm. I let it mark me. I let it remind me of where I've been and where I can always return. And then, with a heart that feels both lighter and deeper, I rise. Not out of the silence, but with it, not leaving the shelter behind, but carrying it like a hidden wing over my soul. Not rushing to proclaim a revelation, but walking into the day as someone who has been quietly remade. My prayer tonight was never about getting an answer. It was about being answered by presence, by steadiness, by love that doesn't vanish when words do, and I have been. And then I breathe in, out, letting the quiet inside me stretch into the day ahead like light spilling over a threshold.